Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today about Fiori elements. With me today is Yor Rombouts.
Hello, Nico.
Hello, who is a colleague who is also working a lot with Fiori elements. And today we want to show you some tips and tricks about Fiori elements to let you see how easy it is to use it and inspire you to start working with Fiori elements with all kinds of use cases. So welcome and thank you for joining. Maybe it's in every webinar, but just for the details, everybody is muted. The session is being recorded, and if you have questions, you can put it in the chat, and after the session, we will have a Q&A in which we will hopefully cover all the questions there. So let's go into the session. So Fiori elements is what we are going to talk about, but what is Fiori elements? Maybe just a quick recap. So Fiori is the face of S4HANA and all SAP interfaces. So most of the products in SAP are using the Fiori design. And so it's very interesting to use. So you have one user experience for everyone. What is Fiori elements then? Fiori elements is a framework that helps us as developers to quickly develop such applications that have the Fiori design and create it just very easily, very quickly by creating CDSs, adding annotations, and then the UI5 app is generated for us. And you see here some examples of what can be generated when using Fiori elements. So that is what we want to cover today, maybe in a nutshell. We will generate an overview page. We will create an extension using both Visual Studio Code as well as Business Application Studio. We will use the Fiori tools. That is very important and handy. And we will hopefully inspire you with some use cases as well as provide you some additional information to just continue your journey in Fiori elements. So let's start with the content then.
Yes, indeed. Let's move on.
Yeah.
So,
it's Barbara.
From Barbara.
Hey, Yor and Nico. Am I interrupting you? Because I have a very important question.
No. Tell us.
So, you remember that report that you made earlier this month? Mark would like to add that on the sales dashboard. Is that possible? Because we would like an overview quite fast.
That shouldn't be too difficult. But how do you want to visualize this in the sales dashboard?
Well, just regular, so that the necessary info is clearly available.
Okay, that's very clear. Maybe what about timing? When do you want the development to be finished? When do you expect it?
Yeah. Here we are. Would it be possible to have that this week? Because next week we have sales meeting, and it would be good if we have it by then. And it's actually quite important.
I guess that's not impossible. Well, we'll take it up as soon as possible, and we will inform you as soon as we've finished.
Great. Just let me know when I can test it. You guys are great. Thanks. Ciao.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Well then.
Yeah, we have our test case right there. I guess no need for a demo that we prepared. I think we can use the business case from Barbara, and we'll present that one.
Yeah, definitely. I'm always in for no presentation and just hands-on. So maybe let's show you how we do this and just build the use case of Barbara. And okay. I think, Yor, that you have experience with the dashboard. So why don't you jump in?
Let's move on. Voila. Well, by any coincidence, we still have the application Barbara was talking about. We have it open right here. So this is the report she was talking about. It's about sales contracts. We have some additional information. So the sole to party, of course, also valid from date, the overall status, and the net value. Well, she was very clear about what needs to be on the dashboard.
Of course, as always.
Indeed. So I would suggest that we use the overall status and show the net value per status in a nice chart on the overview page.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. So the overview page that we already have, there are right now 3 cards on it, but nothing yet about the status. So that would be perfect to implement this one. How will we start with this? Let's go to the Business Application Studio. So here I have the overview page project loaded in the bus.
Okay, maybe just one thing.
Yeah.
This is just in the cloud. This is not an application that you have, right?
No. This is just online, going to the clouds and using the replacement of the previous web IDE in Cloud Foundry. It's the Business Application Studio, where we can just develop any application without the need of installing any software on the PC.
Okay.
So we have the project right here. Now, how can we easily start developing new cards? Well, we're going to use the Fiori tooling. And the Fiori tooling is actually some kind of guided development. So if we right-click on our project, we have the option to select the SAP Fiori tools, open the guided development. And we see that there is an extra view presenting itself right here. And these are all the options that we can use on the overview page. So for the request of Barbara, I would suggest we use an analytical card because that's the one that is presenting charts and data in a graphical overview. So we can just select this one and we're getting some kind of wizard. In the first step or in the first view, it's just a description of what this type of card can do, what it is, with some additional information and a preview on how it can be shown. If this is the one that we would like, we can just start the guide and we can start immediately with the implementation of the card itself.
So you just put some input in a wizard and then magically the code appears and our card is made.
It's all magic. I'm not going to write any single letter of code manually.
Okay, sounds cool.
Yeah. So we are going to use, in the first step, we're going to start creating the card. We need to select the service. We're going to use the service that we used to create the overview page itself. So it's the main service that we'll be reusing.
Okay.
But we need to select an entity. And of course, we'll select the same entity that is used in the list report application. So that's this one. And then we need to add some chart information. We need a chart qualifier, which is actually a kind of pointer to the place where the information will present itself. So let's make it the Dev2Dev qualifier. Then give the chart a title.
Okay. And I guess that this title can also be translated if needed.
Yes, indeed. If translation is necessary, then we can always provide extra translations in the I18N files, so that's not a problem right there. Okay. So we have the chart qualifier and the chart title. Now we need to select our properties. We need a dimension and a measure property. For the dimension, like I said, we are going to use the status. So we'll select for the dimension the overall process status. And for the measure, well, we would like to present the net value per status. So we are going to select this as well, total net amount. And then last but certainly not least is which chart type that we would like to use.
And which one do we use today?
Let's select the donut. It's one of the chart types that are not yet on the overview page. And the business would always likes a little bit of new things. Huh?
Right? And a donut is always good.
A donut is always good. Like you see at the bottom of this view is that we have the option to insert this snippet. So actually all the configuration that we added in the fields above is automatically added in a code snippet that we can add to our card or to our application, to our overview page as soon as our configuration is filled out. So I insert the snippet. And right now we will see that our annotation.xml file is being updated and the code is added to our annotation file.
Very easy. apparently sometimes it fails.
Sometimes it fails, but I think it's added. Let's just have a quick look. We can always check it in the annotation file.
So you still have the code. So it helps you generate it, but if there's something wrong, you can still check the code and maybe fix something if necessary.
Indeed. And here we see the annotation actually. So we can identify it with our qualifier that we added. So right here, not a problem. The code is added. So let's move on to the next step.
Okay.
In step 2, we can configure a presentation variant, and the presentation variant allows us to add some sorting to the data, have a max items shown on the chart. This actually for our use case is not really necessary. So we'll skip step number 2 and move on to step 3. This is to create a data point. This is actually some extra information that we can put on top of the chart. But also this is not really necessary for our use case. So I would suggest we move on to step number 4. In step number 4, we can do a number of things. For example, we can add navigation to another application. So for example, when an end user clicks on the chart, then he can navigate to the main application. So let's provide
Which
this.
is the application we just seen.
Indeed, that's the one. So let's select as an entity again our overall process status. Voila. And also provide our semantic navigation.
So this is the semantic object, basically identifying our application to which we want to navigate.
Yes, indeed, that's the one. Voila. As soon as this is added, or this is configured, we insert a snippet so that the annotations are added to our annotation.xml file. This is added at the bottom, so here it is added. And then we can go to our final step. And maybe you've noticed, but the first 4 steps were actually only adding annotations to our annotation file, but we also need some configuration in the manifest. That's done in the final step. So in the final step, our main service is still selected. We need a card ID. Okay, so we added an ID. Again, select our entity set. It's the same one that we selected in step number 1. Add the title. Subtitle is not really necessary for this use case. Our presentation annotation path, so that's our presentation variant. We just need to select it to have a default. We select our Dev2Dev qualifier so that it knows to which chart we are pointing to.
Yeah, this was created in the first step.
Indeed, as well. Data point annotation, well, we didn't create a data point, so in this case, we don't need to add it. And finally, our identification qualifier, this is also just the default. As soon as this is filled out, again, insert snippets. You need to add it at the bottom of every step that you create. Insert the snippets. Voila. This is added to our manifest and to our overview page.json. They both need the configuration. As you can see at the bottom, our business application studio is saving every change automatically. And also our sales dashboard, or our preview from the application, is automatically updated. And as you can see, magically, I didn't write any single letter of code, but we have our extra chart in which we can see the different statuses and the net amount per status.
Okay, that's great. So very easily we created this card. So if Barbara has additional cards, that's non-issue, I guess.
That's a non-issue. It took me like 10 minutes to give her an extra card. If she needs one extra, well, I just need 10 minutes of her time.
Okay, she will be very happy. But maybe we're in the webinar, so let's maybe continue with our session that we have prepared. Because yeah, we still have to do some content. Or not.
There is Barbara again.
Hey.
Hi guys, me again.
Hey Barbara, long time no see.
Yeah, I know. But actually, we have an additional question, and we wouldn't want you to fall out of work. What do you know?
Yeah, imagine that.
So, in that report from earlier this month, would it be possible to do an adjustment on that? Because we actually would like to see our output as a print preview right from the application. Would that be possible?
Whew, that's already the next level. Using the basic generated Fiori element app, this will not be possible. But maybe we can use some extensions.
Yeah, I think with some extensions we might be able, but to be clear, you want just a pop-up in which you preview the document and then you have an option to print, right?
Yeah, that would be ideal, actually.
Okay, then we're on it.
Okay, great. Thanks for the flexibility. You guys are great. Ciao.
No problem. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, so if we would have known this, we wouldn't have prepared this whole session, but maybe we can just continue with the developments that Barbara is asking, because we might as well show that extension and just show you guys how we do it. And just for additional variation, instead of using the Business Application Studio in the cloud, I would like to show you the Visual Studio Code environment, which is basically the same, but it's a desktop application. So I will do it there. But first, the application that Barbara is talking about, we've seen it before. So it's this application, which is a standard generated application when using Fiori elements. So we make CDS annotations and you get this kind of application with a list, with filters, etc. Now, just quickly to not go into too much detail, but to highlight it. This is the service that is used for the application we've just seen.
Yeah.
So here you have a lot of annotations about how the application is going to look like. So saying what is in the header, for instance. And I will just highlight maybe one or two just to indicate how easy it is to generate an application. For instance, you here have the Sol2 party, and let's see here, we have a consumption semantic object customer, meaning that the information in this field is the identifier for a customer and can be linked to other apps that are about the customer. So that's just an easy semantic object that you can use, and you will see in the app what it can do. And of course,
there was also a filter about this field on the application, right? So it's all done with annotations?
Yeah, so that's also via the annotations. So for the filter, we say that we want a selection field in the second position. So in this case, 20 is the index for it. And then we also want to say how it's going to look like when we click the search help. And that is done via the association Sol2 party. And that is linked to this CDS, which defines again how the pop-up is going to look like. So in the application, if we go there, we see that in our list, we have a Sol2 party, and we can click on it with the semantic object customer with some additional information like the address. And for the search help, if we go to the Sol2 party, we can click it, and we have a nice search help with some fields that are very useful to select the right Sol2 party. And this is just all done, all generated with what we've seen in the CDS and with the additional annotations. So very cool to make applications like that.
Indeed.
But as I've mentioned, we created a basic application. Now, what Barbara wants is a way to select a document, and then we want to click a button to just preview the document and maybe print it from there.
Yeah.
So how do we do this? Let's go to the Visual Studio Code for this. And I already have the code here, which is generated for the application.
Yeah.
And maybe you will see this, but in the code, you don't see any view or any controller. So the application is generated, but you don't have access to the actual code that is generated.
Because it's all the framework that's taking care of this.
And how do we then add a button if we don't have any code to add it? We can easily do it via the Fiori tools. So again, if we go to the Fiori tools, the guided development, and I'm going to pick this demo project. Here, again, the same possibilities. If I go to all guides, and I see immediately the add custom action that I want to add to my application. So I will start this, and again, same wizard with an example, and I will start the guide. And here I can select my page. We are on the main screen, so the list report page, in other words, I will select it. Here we need to provide a function, so on document print seems like a good name. And you will see here a snippet, and this snippet is just a JavaScript function that is generated for us in a controller for the extension. So
but again, you don't need to write any code yourself up till now.
No. If I just insert the snippet, you will see that the file has been generated with the code snippets for printing a document. But of course, it's not actually printing any document, it's just an alert currently.
Yeah.
We now have a way to do something with our action, but we still need a visualization of a button.
Yeah.
So next step, we can here select our entity set on which we are working. And then you have a possibility to say it's a global action for the whole page, or just or a table action. In this case, of course, the table action. Give it a useful ID. So document print seems fine.
And it's a table action because it is an action on one entry of your table.
Yeah, exactly. And then a text, and we want to select a row, as you mentioned, because we want to say this document and print. Again, we have a whole snippet. This time it's going to the manifest.json instead of the controller, because there we put some settings to see how the application, to mention how the application is going to look like. So I will insert it again. And now we should have a button in our application. So if we have a look in our application,
it's already refreshing.
It's already refreshing. We see now that we have a button, but currently it's not highlighted as possible to click on. But it's just a framework that knows we need to select an entry, and you see it's available then. So if you then press the button, we see, of course, nothing, because we don't have any logic yet. For the logic, I'm not going into any details about how to print a document, how to retrieve the data for the document, but I want to highlight the extension API. Because when you create an extension, you have a useful library, let's say, or useful API that you can use, the extension API, and I will show it in the SDK, so the UI5 SDK, which we all know. And here you have, for the list report, but also for object page, for instance, the extension API, which has a lot of useful methods for refreshing the table, for instance, invoking an action on the OData service, and so on. But in this case, I want to use the get selected context, because I want to know which document are we selecting. So how do we do this? I will here close this, and I will go to my generated list report controller. And here, where we have some text, I might as well say, so this, because it's on the controller, the list report controller, extension API. And then I can say get selected context. And this returns an array, as you will see in the documentation, but in this case, we only have one document that we will select, so I will just take the first one. And here we can then select a property, and this will be the sales contracts. So sales contracts, and this will provide me the data I hope that is necessary. So if I save this, we should be able to see that when I click on the button, it will then say which document I am trying to print. So I will select the first entry, I will say print document, and I see
sales contract.
It's the same sales contract. So that works. And now all we need to do is just provide the code to download or to preview the documents. So for this, I have some code that I will just use here, because it's no point in going through it. It's nothing fancy. It's a PDF viewer controller from UI5, and I just put the source code, the source for the document is just via a service that was already created.
Yeah.
So I will not go into detail there. But if I save this, I first, of course, need to say that instead of alert, I go to the open PDF viewer instead. If I save this, then normally if everything works as intended, we should see that if we select a document and I press print preview, we have the PDF viewer and it's opening a document. Of course, it's just a sample document now, but it does what is necessary.
Yeah, the point was actually to have the extra button and the possibility to have an action in which you can put whatever codes that you need to.
Maybe some additional interesting information, because it's also the point to maybe show people some interesting tips and tricks. So if we go to the Visual Studio Code again, we can right-click on our project and say show page map. And in the show page map, we have a visual representation of the settings in a manifest, basically. And here we can say that we want, for instance, a flexible column layout, which is often the case in modern Fiori. And this is on the app level, but we can also go to the list report. And then here we can, for instance, for the table, say that instead of only one document, we want to select multiple documents. So multiple select, of course, our function will not support it currently, but that's not something we want to highlight right now. And maybe just one more, we can also change the type of the table. So currently it's a normal responsive table, but we can say maybe use a tree table. So let's see what our application is going to look like now. And we will see that we have multiple selects possible. So we can select multiple documents and we see that it's a tree table. Of course, it's a flat tree table because you need additional configuration for the actual hierarchy to be shown. But just to give you an idea what is possible with those settings. So that's very easy.
So with the page map, we can actually see all the components from the application and then change the individual settings of each component.
You can change the properties.
Oh, nice.
And maybe how do we know this? So we have some information available to us in some interesting resources, let's say. The first one we've already mentioned, the SDK that everyone knows and uses, of course. And next to that, you have API references saying all functions, etc. But you also have documentation about using annotations. So that is something that you can also find here.
Indeed, in the documentation, so we can select the development for Fiori elements, then select our type of Fiori elements that we wish to develop. And there are a lot of examples of annotations that you can use, not only in ABAP, but also the XML annotation and the CAP series annotation. So it's actually all the same technology, but you can use it in different types of implementation.
So a lot of information on the spot. Maybe some more information available on the help.sap.com about the SAP Fiori tools that we are using. And here you can find information, for instance, about the page map and the page editor for all those settings I've just shown you. So that's also an interesting resource. And maybe last but not least, you have the Community Wiki. It's not always shown in the Google pages I've seen, but it has useful content. So I often check this to see if there's some things that are nice to see and maybe to try.
Indeed, each month there are new blogs created by just developers like us, and they sometimes they are added to this wiki when they are interesting, and so also the latest newest options that you can use with the Fiori elements are added here in this wiki.
So yeah, that's basically it. We've developed everything that Barbara has asked us, so I think she will be very happy.
She better be, right?
No, she better be. But maybe because we're still in the webinar, we want to just wrap up our session, because I think we're already going using a lot of time.
I think we're perfect on time.
On time even. Maybe highlight what we've done.
Sure. So what we did was, on the one hand, create an extra card on the overview page. I used the Business Application Studio, which was the cloud environment. You create the extension with the Visual Studio Code environment, which was the local development. But the speed was incredible, right? We just used half an hour, and we added 2 questions from the business to our applications.
Yeah. So we see that we can really speed up the development because we have a framework that is generating the UI for us. You don't actually need UI5 knowledge to just create business applications any longer. And you have the Fiori tools to even simplify the development steps even further, and just make it that you fill in some input fields and then it's generating code for you. So that's very interesting.
Yeah. And the 2 development environments, it doesn't matter which one we choose, because all the options are there as well in the Business Application Studio, as well in the Visual Studio Code environment. And well, both have their ups and downs. So
yeah, that's true. I think for the Business Application Studio, you don't need any setup knowledge because you can just start working on it. With the Visual Studio Code, because it's local, you still need to install some things, install some libraries and tools to start working. But once it's set up, you can just work offline as well, which is also interesting sometimes. But yeah, you have freedom of development environments. And then as a last one, it's template based. So Fiori Elements has a fixed amount of templates, but it's not the end of what you can do. You can still use the extensions, as we've seen, to further enhance, further empower what is generated standard out of the box for you with Fiori Elements, and then just add whatever you need to create applications that fit your business needs. So yeah, you can do a lot with Fiori Elements, and I think it's very useful to create applications, business applications. And I hope, everyone thinks the same and is ready to start using Fiori Elements even more. I think that is what we wanted to highlight today. So maybe, I don't know if there's any questions so far, but we can go to the Q&A now.
So if any questions, just type it in the chat, and we'll try to highlight as many as possible of them.
Okay, so a first question is, can you export, import projects from the Web IDE to the Business Application Studio?
Well, I would say that best is to use best practice and use some kind of Git repository and store the application there, so that you always have a backup. And of course, from the Git, you can choose freely if you want to import it to the Web IDE, to the Business Application Studio, or to the Visual Studio Code. It doesn't matter. If the repository is complete in the Git, then you can use it anywhere.
Okay. Any other? So what actions are required to set up the Visual Studio Code for Fiori Elements? Okay, so if you want to set up the Visual Studio Code, you need to, of course, install Visual Studio Code. And this implicates that you will need some libraries like NPM library, etc., because we will use libraries like Fiori Tools, which is an add-on that you can install in the Visual Studio Code, and it uses NPM to install things, etc. So those are actual things that you need to install. And I think maybe there is also a global install that is necessary, but there is also in the developers.sap.com, you will also have information available to help you guide you through the process and say what you need to install on your PC to just start working with Visual Studio Code.
Yes, there are blogs about it, how to install the Visual Studio Code.
How do you add download functionality to a list page?
I guess they mean exporting to Excel, for example.
Yeah, so if it's the export to Excel, you mean it's basically out of the box functionality. In our application, we didn't highlight it, but you also have a button at the right side of the table in which you can just download to Excel out of the box. And you have also in the properties that I've shown in the page map that you can put it on or off. So if you don't want the possibility to download to Excel, you can put it off. But by default, it's just turned on. And the information on your table that you see is then extracted to Excel.
And maybe one small thing that I would like to add to this is that the download to Excel is automatically available, but from a certain UI5 version. In the early versions where Fiori elements were released, there the exports was not automatically available, but you could add it with an extension as well.
Okay. Yeah. You can put annotations in the CDS. You can put them in the front end. When is it beneficial to put them in CDS when in the front end? That's a very good question as well. Like you said, you can do you can put annotations in Eclipse in your CDS, and you can put it via the bus, let's say, in the annotation file. The benefit of using it in the backend is that the application is just the code is in one place, and the generated code is just an empty box generated and nothing more than that. The benefit of using the front end is that you maybe have more flexibility concerning the backend version you have, because annotations have a higher version requirement. I think it's 7.50 that you need for annotations to work well, while you can use CDS starting from 7.40. So if you have a 7.40, you can make a CDS already and then further enhance the generated templates with annotations in the front end. So that's a possibility there.
There are indeed different use cases because, like Nico said, it's beneficial to have all the code and the annotations in one place, just one place where you can maintain the whole application. But say you have a service that is being provided or is providing data to many different applications, then it's more beneficial to add the annotations in the front end because the annotations added to a service or to a CDS applies to all the applications on which a Fiori element is generated. So it's always case to case that you need to check what's more beneficial. But one tip that we can give is try to keep the annotations in one place, or in the backend or in the front end, because as soon as you're going to use front end and backend annotations together, then you might get into some trouble.
Yeah, and also in the front end, you don't have all the same CDS annotation available as in the backend, because in the backend you have annotations to mention something about the data model itself, and in the front end you only have the UI annotations. That's also a difference there.
Correct.
So I think we're at the end of the session. I don't know if there's any other questions, but if you have other questions, you can always send them to us, and we will be able to just reply via email. We will be happy to. So don't hesitate to send all your questions. We want to maybe thank you for. So we want to thank you for attending the session, for joining us, and we have here a QR code for the LinkedIn of our Flexso Digital page, and in which we have a lot of content on what we do, and so you can keep up to date with what we do.